Deni Elliott. Oh my God. I am meeting somebody who I don't, you incorporate so many things that I admire and give me chills and excite me about the dog world because you have had a now series of guide dogs in order for you to navigate the world, which you don't see properly, or maybe at this point even at all. The name of your book is Catching Sight: How a Guide Dog Helped Me See Myself. And what's fascinating about the book, Denny, is that while a huge part of it is about how your, I guess your heart dog, Alberta, was trained, but you had a couple of guide dogs that you tried to train yourself first. Let's talk about you being an ethics professor and some of the ethical issues that come up in the beginning of the book, which is very interesting because obviously you're self aware. So you bring up these topics. I'm like, but wait, you're an ethics professor. What the heck? So let's talk about that first, because on your journey to losing your sight and then having to come to terms with it and admit it and deal with it and let the outside world know or not know, where did your choice to be an ethics professor intersect with those choices and decisions?
That's a wonderful question, and I wish that I could give you a direct connection. But for me, I think that just because of the time in which I was born, I was interested and involved in civil rights and
Yes.
democratic procedure and
Mm-hmm.
the Vietnam War, and all of that was happening. And that's, I think, what really inspired my interest in ethics. I found myself even in middle school, high school, thinking about what people owed each other, what government owed people, what people
Wow.
owed government, how we talk about that. I got involved with journalism very early. And
Yes.
so it just seemed to me natural to spend my life thinking about how we should all live together.
Wow. The beginning of the book is fascinating in that regard because it is thoughtful, because ethics is about thinking about what you're doing, what other people are doing, how do we keep things good or keep them from going bad. The book is about guide dogs and the guide dog learning that you did, and it's written with Graham Buck, who seems to be an extraordinary person who
Oh,
trains
he
these
is.
dogs and trains the kind of star dogs and star pupils, which we'll talk about in a minute. But as far as your interest in these ethics about the world and how we all live, in reading that in the early part of the book, it makes me wonder how hard is it for you to teach that at a time when ethics seems to have flown out the window in terms of how people are treating each other, how government is treating people, how people are treating government figures and buildings, etc. How hard is that for you?
I think that what's important is that we take our cues from what we see around us. One of the things that I taught for years and as an ethics professor is that we don't get very many good models of people making mistakes, people getting forgiven,
Oh, yeah.
moving on
Yeah.
from mistakes. And so, because we don't see what that looks like, it's really hard for us to imagine how it can be. And so, I find that in the classroom teaching that I did for 40 years, and I'm now
Right.
retired from
Right.
that, but that during that time, I spent a lot of time just helping people say, I didn't get it right this time, and that's okay. I can keep working on it. I created a classroom where it was safe to make mistakes. Be graded anything just the first time and said, oh, you got it or you didn't get it. I wanted people to learn, and that means making mistakes.
Wow. That is just a fantastic way of putting it and a great segue into you deciding for a variety of reasons, economic and I don't know, convenience, that you would take your pet dog, who happened to be not a Chihuahua, which is good because Chihuahuas make really lousy seeing eye dogs, to turn that dog into a seeing eye dog because the dog was so responsive to you and understood you so well, and vice versa. So what about that? You, in the end, went to this top flight guide dog teaching place that was really rigorous, the amount of days and hours and rules and recertification.
Mhm.
And it was, wow, it was fascinating. People just have to read Catching Sight so that when you see a guide dog and a person on the street, you first of all don't stop and pat the dog, and you never ask the dog's name because they have to tell you a fake name or it screws the dog up, or maybe you could kidnap the dog, or I don't know. But the main thing is to understand these people have worked so hard. The dogs are amazing and make me cry every time I think about them. But you folks that work with them work so hard on building the relationship, sustaining the relationship, fine tuning it. So when you started out on your own and thought, yeah, okay, this will work. The dog knows how to get me from, I don't know, my apartment to the campus and into my office. What about that? Do people do that anymore? Were you a one-off?
I don't really know how many privately trained guide dogs there are in the country. And for me, it was all about independence. My my early experience was being born in a family where my mom and dad and sister all worked really hard for me to push my limitations in the background and for me to focus on what I could do well. And that was great in so many ways. But what it did was make it difficult for me to, I don't know, look for help. I thought that I needed to do everything on my own. And I grew up with a very special dog long before I went to school from infancy, big black dog named Marty. And Marty took care of me. And so when I finally accepted the fact that I was progressively losing vision when I was in my 30s and first heard the term legally blind, I thought, okay, there's got to be a way to deal with this. And I hated the idea of walking with a white cane. I thought
Yes,
people would pity me. I thought if I have a gorgeous dog at my side, then they're going to
right.
look at the dog and not even think about what it all means. And at the moment, that was a really good thing from my point of view. So I had a 6-month-old puppy at the time when I was first told I was legally blind. And I had actually bought her to do agility competition with
Oh,
her
that's right.
because I was into dog sports as a young person, as a young adult. And as it turned out, I didn't have enough vision to do agility. And as I was having trouble tripping over equipment and so on, Oriel, the golden retriever puppy, was getting more and more concerned and more hesitant. And so I stopped going to classes because I didn't want to make her fearful. And then as I thought about it, I thought if she's paying that much attention to me, maybe she could be trained to help me avoid obstacles. And I knew a service dog trainer, somebody who worked with people who had mobility difficulties and used
Right.
dogs to help them. And he had some background in working with guide dogs as well. And he interviewed Oriel and basically said, hey, she's got the right temperament. I think this could work. And so basically, through Oriel and another privately trained dog named Wiley, I had dogs who help steer me around obstacles. And I thought, this is great. But Wiley turned out not to be a good candidate for guide dog work for lots of other reasons that I won't
Yes.
go into.
But reasons that many dogs, even that are purpose bred, and you talk about that, the 50%, they don't
Yeah,
like to call it washout or failure rate, but even with the most incredibly, intensively brilliant scientific planning, about half of the dogs bred for it. So the fact that Wiley wasn't even bred for it and then wound up,
right.
what did he eat? Pizza crusts or ran after squirrels, or I forget. He did a lot of those things you weren't supposed to do, right?
Ultimately, he killed a cat,
Oh, that's right. Prey
right?
drive, which was unusual.
And he also didn't like people bouncing into my office, and I was department chair at the time,
That's
so that
right.
was not a good thing. So anyway, there were lots of reasons
Right.
that Wiley became he had what we call a career change. And so when dogs choose not to be guide dogs, and they make a choice, they have what guide dog schools call career change and go do something else. And
Yes.
Wiley ended up working as a psychiatric service dog for a young veteran who was struggling with coming back from I think it was Iraq and Afghanistan at that point, and Wiley was perfect for him. So
Nice.
that worked out well.
Yeah.
But then basically a very close friend of mine, Pam Hogel, who appears throughout the book, she, among other things, was a service dog trainer. And she said, look, you need to trust the experts. You need a dog who really knows what is going on. It's not just what I called a guide dog on training wheels.
Yes.
I needed a dog who really could collaborate with me. And I didn't even know that was possible until I went to Guiding Eyes.
What you had created for yourself was your personal version. So how would you know what the triple A gold star version was? You'd come up with a solution. And you didn't think of yourself as blind. You thought of yourself as having sight problems, which got worse. So when you were had to deal with the completely blind and you actually wound up going to school, to this school, and they had to they weren't even sure they wanted to take you because
Yeah, I
you were
know.
in denial. But you're writing about it is so open and honest. It's like, oh wow, you get to be they get to decide whether or not you're a candidate. And it has only partly to do with how much you can or can't see. It has to do with your willingness to give it all up. Wear a
Yeah.
blindfold. If you aren't 100% completely blind, you have to identify as completely blind in order to do the training with the dog who is trained for someone with zero sight. You talk a
Right.
lot about walking with a blindfold when you had some shadowy looks and how much a Graham Buck and these other incredible instructors blindfold themselves when they do mini trainings with dogs. Just, oh, I'm going to go over to the other office. They slip on a blindfold because they don't want to cheat the dog by anticipating something because they can totally see it. That's an interesting thing, isn't it?
Yeah, Guiding Eyes for the Blind was the first time I had ever been in a situation or an environment that was created to be safe for people who were totally blind. And I'm not totally blind. And
Right.
who knows, I may always have some vision, but I think that's something important for people to understand is that if you have 100 people who are gathered together who are have been diagnosed as legally blind, only about 15 of them have zero sight. Almost
Oh, interesting.
85 of us, statistically
Right.
speaking, do have some vision. And in fact, at Guiding Eyes, it was really fascinating for me to talk to my classmates and hear people talk about, yeah, I can see a little bit in the center of my eye, or I can see some peripheral, or I have slivers, or it's glare and fog. And for me, it's splotches. I've had splotches all over my vision from the time I was an infant, and whether that was from birth or whether that was from over-oxygenation, in the
Right.
days following my birth, it's irrelevant. The point is that I don't have very much sight compared to normally sighted people, but normally sighted people tend to think it's either all or nothing. You're either blind or you're
Yes.
not. It's not like that. But in terms of training a guide dog, the dogs have to be trained to be the eyes at the end of the harness.
Yes.
And so if you start with the assumption, Guiding Eye starts with the assumption that students coming in have zero sight. And if some of us have residual vision, that's great. And over time, the dog learns to adjust to, oh, Deni can do this, she can't do that.
Wow.
And so we collaborate as true teammates.
Yes. Like you can do something across the room without the dog getting up and helping you go across the room,
Oh, yeah. Well,
for
and
example.
people who are totally blind could do that too.
Yeah,
They,
that's
they, they
true.
know their environments.
They've memorized it the way we know that blind dogs can memorize an environment and be fine as long as
Right.
you don't move the furniture on them.
Yep.
So, what about the heart of the book, the meat of the book is when you have to go to this facility. Okay, they've accepted you. There's still a question mark next to your name. Is she going to do this the way we need it to be done and the way a dog needs to be done or not? That first meeting of you and Alberta, Alberta is some awesome dog. Oh my God. Just saying her name chokes me up because she was like the dog of all dogs. I'm sure there were other Albertas out there, but wow, the way you describe her, depict her, and your relationship with her, and her brilliance, and her wow, she was just intuitive and brilliant and brave and just smart as a whip. What about that first greeting? Those first greetings always sound a little corny, but they're real, aren't they?
Oh boy, yeah. As you pointed out, it was a climb for me to get into Guiding Eyes, and I didn't
Yes.
realize until I was writing this book and interviewing Graham and other people at Guiding Eyes how close I came at not being accepted. So So I could tell that I was on kind of shaky ground when I was
Yes.
there. People didn't seem quite accepting of me. I was trying to be careful and not get in trouble. And in those days when we started off at Guiding Eyes in class, we started off on a Sunday, and we had Sunday night, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday morning to do what are called Juno walks, where we walk with an instructor who's holding the harness so that they can make sure that
Yes.
our skills are ready
Yes.
for the dogs. They know the dogs are ready, but they don't know about the rest of us. And as fabulous as Alberta was, as a perfect match as she was for me, I think that probably everybody feels that way with their
Yes.
first guide dog.
Yes.
So yes, Alberta is magical, but she really isn't a unicorn. I think that
Yes. Yes.
all Guiding Eyes guide dogs are matched really well with their people and work really well.
Explain what you
But
mean
so
about not wanting to get into trouble, because I think people need to understand that it was just that you were maybe a wee bit too independent, or you didn't want to let go completely of this sense of yourself, having been this really independent, very successful in the world you had chosen to be in person, and having to give up, I don't know, embrace vulnerability, embrace dependence. Hard,
Tracy, I didn't trust people.
right? Right.
So the idea of me
Hmm.
trusting a dog, I was walking into alien territory in so
Yes.
many ways. And I was so used to being controlled and in charge and guarded so that
Yes.
nobody got too close to me and nobody knew about my limitations. And there were all of these things that I did that just created obstacles for myself. Ultimately, I understood that.
Right.
But when I went to Guiding Eyes, it was, I better be really careful here. And I was already really careful in life. And so it took Graham, who was smart, intuitive, had matched this terrific dog with me 2 months before I even made it
That's
to
right.
campus.
That's right.
And he got me somehow. He understood that I wasn't a control freak. I was just terrified.
Oh, that's so sweet. The subtitle, How a Guide Dog Helped Me See Myself, that's really the other power of the book. Besides your exquisite description of the ins and the outs and the daily learning process of these people with their teachers and their dogs, it's about learning to see yourself. And somebody with complete vision can read your book and think, yeah, I get that. I get that. And I get why it is an obstacle to cut everybody off and to put up these walls. But on the other hand, it's a defense mechanism that has served you in good stead. And I think a lot of us get to middle age and beyond and think, maybe we could approach the world differently. But boy, that's a grinding of gears, isn't it? Those are some long held habits and safety mechanisms. And you had to give it all up. It was very brave of you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But I think we all make very brave choices. I look at life as a lifelong opportunity for moral growth and development. I can only get better.
Yeah,
And I think that once I started getting involved in ethics and thinking about that, so that was as again high school years
right.
at the latest, that I thought, what do I need to improve? How can I get better? What are my next steps? And it's only because that is a constant part of my life that I could teach ethics well, I think,
Yeah.
in that I could provide that kind of modeling for my own college students. But that idea that I'm struggling with limitations, that's human nature. That doesn't make me special. It makes me one of us.
But admitting it, it's when you said earlier, admitting mistakes and saying, yeah, I kind of blew that. I wish I'd done that differently. And being able to say it to yourself and saying it to someone else and say, I'm going to do it differently or better or give me another chance. We really don't have much space in Western culture to do that. I imagine there's all kinds of Eastern cultures where it's all about that. I don't know. I'm so Western and literal. I'm useless at that spiritually stuff. But I think it's really great when someone like you, who is very intellectual and very clear about what has worked for you, says, okay, I'm going to take some of the bricks off that wall, see what's on the other side. And there
Hmm.
was this dog, and then these other dogs. You said you didn't really trust dogs, but you said that Marty, when you were a little girl, that Marty took care of you. What do you mean by that?
First of all, you have to remember that I thought Marty was my big brother. Yeah, I knew he was big and black and furry, you
We all
know?
know, we all of us
I,
who grew up from birth with a dog, so it had two more legs than we had, but they were our siblings.
exactly. And so from the very beginning, Marty had appointed himself my caregiver in a lot of ways. And one of the things I talk about in the book is that Marty led me around obstacles that I didn't know other people could see. From the time I was a
Oh,
little
right.
kid and just starting to walk, Marty would come get me and I would hold on to Marty. And then I didn't run into things.
Wow. That's amazing. He anointed himself your seeing eye dog.
Yeah,
I
he
mean,
took
come
care of
on,
me.
right? It's more take care. It doesn't just mean play with you like a lot of
No.
goofy labs will do or cocker spaniels. I'd like to see a cocker spaniel, having lived with one and viewing at least a Malfi as a visitor from another planet. I can't see them stepping outside of themselves and thinking, oh, my little human is going to bump into something. Let me go intervene. That's a rare dog. It may not be a unicorn, but certainly it's that quality that you meet one out of many dogs in your life. You've had two guide dogs, I think, or maybe more since Alberta, who's the star of the
Yes.
book. What's it like for you to let go of a guide dog who can no longer be your guide dog? In her case, what am I right that she just really wasn't up for it anymore? Didn't want to put
No.
on the harness? That was another dog.
Yeah, Alberta had an untimely early retirement, and we'll just leave it at that. And
Okay,
people can read about that in the book.
that's right.
It's hard to talk about
You're
even
right. You're
now.
right. I shouldn't even bring it up because,
No,
yeah.
it's okay. It's just that, yeah, it was devastating when I
Hmm.
had to let Alberta go for many reasons. But the dog that Graham matched me with next, I thought, how could he have matched me with these dogs that were so different from one another?
Yes.
Alberta had a big heart, was a risk taker. When I got scared, she'd shake it off and say, "Oh, come on, Deni, we can do this." You know, she just
Nice.
had that
Yeah.
let's do it
Yeah.
attitude. And then I was matched with Koala, a beautiful, tall black lab who was really analytic and she was an introvert. And maybe your listeners don't know this, but dogs come in extrovert and
A-
introverts just like people.
absolutely.
And so Koala, she was a very good guide dog, but she really wanted to think about things. She wasn't just going to rush
Right.
into things
Right.
and
Yeah.
say, let's do this, we'll figure it out on the way. Not Alberta, excuse me, Koala knew her part of the job. She knew my part of the job. She expected both of us to do our parts of the job. And when she had enough, she liked to go lie down in my shower and just have some private space and time.
That's the beauty of the book is these dogs are all so different. The way they interacted with you, what they brought to you, what they brought out of
Yeah.
you has such variety. We've run out of time, Deni Elliott, but this book, Catching Sight, is just extraordinary. Just extraordinary. And your telling of it is a thing of beauty. Thank you for sharing your journey and the journey of all these dogs that even when I just say these guide dogs, I choke up. They're incredible. Thank you. You've done an
Thank
amazing job.
thank you, Tracy, for all that you do.
Thanks so much, Deni. Bye bye.
Bye.